Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Well, we said on the last podcast that we wanted to have at least one more game that we could sink our teeth in, that would give us some analysis, that would give us an idea of what the Cavs might look like heading into the playoffs. We got a bit of a dress rehearsal against the Atlanta Hawks, a possible playoff matchup, probably the most likely playoff matchup for the first round, and the Cavs came away with a win. Joining me today to discuss that is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, but don't you dare bury the lead.
I buried the lead. I had to introduce you first.
Yeah, we're going to end the podcast today.
Yes, we will also, at the end of the podcast, be showing a interview that we got to do earlier today with Max Strus. Really, really appreciate Max's time. Some really great answers from him. Obviously, you know, he's going to be an instrumental part of the Cavs playoff push, so we got to talk to him a little bit about that. But before we get to that interview, which again we will have at the end of the podcast, we'll get to this game versus the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, the kind of the first big thing that came with this game was Dean Wade returned to the lineup. It was nice to have Dean back there. Kenny elected to use him within the starting five. Donovan Mitchell also returned from a shorter absence, but we got to have a look at what very well could be the Cavs starting five going into the playoffs against what very well could be their first round matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what I expect to be their rotation in the postseason, short of Jalen Tyson, the one absence. He was earlier marked as questionable for this game, then downgraded to doubtful. So, you know, without being a medical professional, one can surmise maybe that toe didn't respond as well as you wanted and shoot around earlier in the day. The thing with toe injuries,
least, maybe a step in the right direction that he was upgraded to questionable.
Yeah. I would say so. But you know, toes are tricky, and the Cavs know that better than most. So, you know, like, and honestly, with 2 regular season games left, I might expect this to be the rotation in game 1 of the NBA playoffs until, you know, I see Jalen show that he's healthy. I mean, you know, that's maybe a more pessimistic view, or like maybe conservative, depending on how you want to frame it. But you know, this was real basketball, and we opened up our last podcast sitting here talking about should we see real basketball the rest of the season? Should they just shut it down? And I do think it's noteworthy that they decided to play all their guys that were available, that could be available. It was clear this was not a shut it down game. I think we'll learn a lot about their next one to see what they do on Friday, I believe it is. Their next game, also against Atlanta. But yeah, we saw real hoops, and we saw Dean Wade get placed in the starting lineup. That starting lineup, I thought, played pretty well in this game. It was really the second and third units that you know, the ones that really hurt the Cavs in this game. And Dean did his job. He hit a couple threes, got a transition finish. And it was nice to see him back because even though I don't know if he was on a minutes restriction, he only played 21 minutes. And I think he, you know, I think there were times they missed him out there for some of his other prospective run. But you know, when he's out there, the team just is bigger, stronger, and switchier, and they just feel a lot more whole with all 3 of their big men available.
Yeah, and according to Pivot Fade, obviously the NBA.com lineup data isn't available from this game, but in the 8.5 minutes that the starting 5 played together for the Cavs, they outscored Atlanta by 17 points. They had a 152 offensive rating and a 67 defensive rating. They were really, really damn good, right? Like, and we know that when everyone is healthy, and when you have, honestly, even 2 out of 4, maybe even 3 out of 4 of that core 4 playing at a really, really high level, the Cavs are very difficult to beat. And they certainly got that tonight with Donovan Mitchell's incredible shot making. Thought Evan Mobley was a man possessed out there and really had a big impact on the game. And, you know, having Dean Wade out there for that added defensive stability, I think obviously makes a big impact.
Yeah, and Kenny got weird in this game. That's the one way it really was a playoff preview to some extent. I was almost surprised he put it on tape, Justin. The fact that they had, I think it was Harden was guarding Okongwu at certain points in the first quarter.
Harden was guarding Okongwu.
Then they had Jarrett on Daniels.
Dyson Daniels. Yeah.
Dean, I want to say, had the CJ matchup, and Evan had Jalen. Was that the?
Yeah.
The way that that was wonky. And really testing, the fact that they didn't really believe in Okongwu as a creator and a post masher, which is not really his game, and didn't believe in Daniel's 3-point shot. I have some questions about it just because the dribble handoff stuff for the CJ McCollums of the world was wide open with Jarrett sunk all the way back into the lane. I think they'll have to. They definitely put out some tape for Quinn Snyder to analyze on that and maybe find ways to attack. But it does feel noteworthy that they did something weird in this game.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest believer in the, showing them stuff. Like, I think at the end of the day...
Oh, I wasn't talking about being, like, risky. I just think it's noteworthy that they tried.
I agree with you. I think you are correct to point that out. I do think it's noteworthy. I think that would be something that the Cavs are likely going to do if they go to the playoffs. But I'm more discussing the discourse of whether or not you show something. I think at the end of the day, the Atlanta Hawks know that Dyson Daniels, Onyeka Okongwu, Mo Gay, like a lot of these guys are going to be completely ignored from the 3-point line, right? Like we are going to leave them wide open. And in the first half, yeah, Daniels hit his 1-3.
Daniels is shooting 18% from 3.
Right. He's shooting 18% from 3. And I think Mo Gay went 1 of 3 too. And people are like, well, why are you leaving these guys wide open? And they are, people, when
he is a 30% 3-point shooter, just for a frame of reference.
Okay, but still. But like
that's pretty bad.
when Isaac Okoro would go 1 of 3 and the other team would leave him open, we weren't panicking about that, or we would panic about that. We weren't bragging about that, right? So when Cavs fans panic about Mo Gay going 1 of 3, you will live with those open shots, right? You're taking away a lot from the paint. And then on the offensive end of the floor, yeah, obviously the Cavs are going to go out there and target CJ McCollum on a lot of possessions, right? Like they are going to hunt some of these matchups. And I think that's one of the things about the Atlanta Hawks in general is they do have some really good talent. They do have some real size that they can put out there and make the Cavs uncomfortable. But they also have a lot of one-way players, much more so than the Cavs, right? Where guys that you can completely ignore from the perimeter. And part of me was thinking, I kind of like having Evan on someone that he can ignore, where he's able to roam and provide a lot of help. So I was thinking that as I was watching the game kind of unfold. But then my other thought was, Evan's completely taking Jalen Johnson out of this game.
4 of 16 and scored 12 points. Some of those were on open threes he just missed.
Right.
But, man, there were a lot of just erasures. I thought this was one of Evan's best defensive games in terms of not being quietly great defensively, but being loudly great defensively.
Yes. Yeah, and also very aggressive offensively, right? Like he and Jared both had some pretty aggressive dunk attempts that didn't go down, but just the force to get to the line to generate offensive rebounding opportunities. I thought both of them were very good there. Jared didn't have the most efficient game, just going 4 of 9 from the floor, but 16 points and 8 rebounds. I thought he was effective. A B game, I would say, from him. And overall, largely good defense from him.
21 free throw attempts for your 2 bigs is nothing to sneeze at.
Right. And I think any matchup versus Atlanta is going to come down to how consistently the Cavs use the bigs, because I do think that is truly the one advantage that they have. As much as Atlanta has perimeter size that can make the Cavs wings and guards uncomfortable, they do not have the size to contend with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen on the inside. And I think we saw when the Cavs successfully used the bigs and continued to feed them, a lot of good things happened in this game. And then in the fourth quarter, when the game was kind of in the balance and things got tight again, we did see both Donovan Mitchell and James Harden revert to isolation basketball and not use the bigs. And I thought that that made their lives harder than it needed to be, right? And again, that's one of those key things that we're looking at here, right? The whole thesis of bringing James Harden in beyond the availability aspect is he is going to consistently involve the bigs. That did not occur tonight. And in my eyes, that is on both James and Donovan to make sure that we're consistently running the offense, because the Cavs are best when they operate as a collective.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I didn't know if we wanted to talk about the third quarter or the fourth quarter first. Let's start with the fourth on that front. Yeah, I mean, I think you do have to give a little credit to Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which, oh my gosh, some of the finishes from him. Shea is his cousin, correct? Is that
That's correct? Yeah.
Man, he's looking like his cousin out there. Let me tell you. The finishes were ridiculous. But I want to give a lot of credit to those guys. They were great at the point of attack. And they even did a pretty good job of stopping the guard action to get McCollum involved. I do think that I think Harden and Donovan had a bad fourth quarter. I don't have any other way to put it. Just Donovan didn't make a field goal in the fourth. Goes 0 for 4 in the quarter. Got to the line a decent amount. I think neither of them really got to the line until the fourth quarter, right? And they did not miss, which was nice. But I thought, the possessions where Harden or Donovan were screening for each other to get switches were very odd. Where it was like, all right, we've gotten Daniels off of Harden, and so now he's got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and we took 7 seconds to do it. I thought that was a little strange, especially when McCollum's right there. And Sam is just spacing, and the Sam has set probably more screens than Donovan and Harden combined this season. So I was a little surprised by that. And then when they did get McCollum switched, I was surprised they didn't run action at him. They just kind of ISO'd him against a set defense, and I feel like that's about the best case scenario for a CJ McCollum ISO defense possession, is to not have to navigate, not have to get over a screen. So I just didn't feel like, sometimes you watch these games and you go, man, did the Hawks figure something out in the fourth quarter? I don't know if I feel that way. I just don't think Donovan and James played particularly well in that quarter. I mean, James had one of his least efficient nights of the year, scoring 21 on 23 shots.
He also had that wild possession where he put on a dribbling clinic and then gave it up without much pressure.
Yeah, that was tough. It's one of those things that I kind of like, you weirdly go, is that a little encouraging? That like, it's not like they had a fatal flaw. The guards just kind of didn't play their best. Your mileage may vary. Obviously also in the fourth, some smaller lineups. Dean, I don't think played any minutes in the fourth. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't remember any.
So they were just really until they got back to Mobley and Allen in the last like 4 or 5 minutes of the game. There was the first 6 minutes where the Hawks really reconnected after being down 17 points. Really happened against these smaller lineups. I don't know how much, like, my eye test said I wanted more size in there. But what did you think about that?
I largely agree with you. And I think this happening in this game is encouraging, right? Because the top 4 guys for the Cavs have only played 7 games together. And these types of hiccups where you kind of get away from what you do best and you revert to isolation basketball, or guys try to do too much or they try to do too little and they get passive in these situations. These are the types of concerns that I think we've been trying to communicate, right? That it does take time. It does take, reps to develop that chemistry and continuity. So I think having this as an example of, hey, we got it going in the third quarter. We were doing what we needed to do, and we were doing it against one of the hottest defenses in the NBA. Like I think what the Cavs were able to accomplish there, outscoring Atlanta by 24 points, putting up 44 points in a quarter versus that defense, is significant. I think that really, really matters. But when things got a little bit tight and Atlanta managed to come back on them, they abandoned what they were doing best. I think that that's something you can look at in film. I think that is something that you can pull upon maybe it's game 2 of the first round of the playoffs and you're giving up the lead a little bit in the fourth quarter, and you call a timeout, you kind of gather yourself on the bench and say, hey, we did this before when we played Atlanta that last week of the season. Let's try to get something going downhill. Let's try to involve the bigs. Let's make sure that we don't fall back into these habits. I agree with you. I don't think that this is an example of Atlanta figuring something out. I think that this is an example of something getting some sunlight with the Cavs, right? One of those areas where, hey, we're going to have to work on this and we're going to have to make a conscious effort that we don't beat ourselves by no longer playing Cavs basketball.
Yeah, I think that's the great way to put it. And last thing I wanted to note on the fourth quarter, because I do want to talk about the third quarter, because boy, was that fun. But before we do, when we've spent a lot of time talking about who starts for this team. You're on team Strus as of now. I'm on team Merrill as of now. A small camp, but a sturdy one. Yeah. And as we noted, Dean gets the start. But Dean did not close. It was Sam with the new core for
I thought
closing. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how did you think that those lineups held up? Obviously, it wasn't a particularly strong fourth quarter. I really feel like at any point for the Cavs, but like they did hold them off. What did you think about Sam in that spot?
I largely was fine with the rotations tonight. I thought Kenny did a overall pretty good job with it. You're going to have to make sure, right? Like when you are starting Dean, you need to make sure that when Jared and Evan are out there, there is at least one of Dean Wade, Max Strus, and then eventually when he's back, Jalen Tyson. I think that that's really, really important, because if you don't have at least two of those guys out there, that means you are going to 4-guard lineups, and I don't think we feel great about those. Via pivot fade, I kind of looked at it because I noticed the 4-guard lineups, and I was trying to figure out exactly how much game time was spent in those types of configurations. Evan out there with no Wade, Max, or Dean was just under 2 minutes. We were outscored by 6 points in those minutes. Jarrett with no Wade, Max, or Evan, -2 in a minute and a half. So you're talking about 3.5 minutes out of 48 minutes that we played with kind of a true 4-guard lineup.
That just really goes to show you how painful losing minutes feels.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
If you had told me we'd played 3.5 4-guard minutes in that game, I would have been like, "You are out of your mind, bro."
Yeah, but this is, this is what it says. Unless the app is flawed, which I don't think it is. They're usually very good with this stuff. So, but still,
take that for data.
You're outscored by 8 in those 4-guard minutes, and you outscore Atlanta by 14 in the minutes where you do have some size out there.
Yeah.
So
it's just tough because it's so noisy, and there's just but this is what the playoffs are. So you also have to take some credence to it.
Right. And I think it's noisy, but it's also something that we're keeping an eye on, right? Like it doesn't necessarily, like, this doesn't have to be written in stone, but I do think that it's worth discussing. One, in contextualizing how little they actually did play in those configurations and how those minutes went. The other side of that is they were outscored by 22 points in the 14 minutes that Dennis Schroeder played. And I do think that there is something to them feeling smaller when Schroeder is out there than just about anybody, right? Because you're talking about a 4-guard lineup and it's Sam, Keon, Don, and James. You still feel like you have decent size out there, right? Like it doesn't feel the same way. And I think you can even get away in some matchups with James Harden playing some power forward defensively. Atlanta might be one of those teams just because there are guys that you can ignore on the defensive end. But I do think in general, when it comes to a playoff series, I just don't know how much Schroeder minutes I have an appetite for. And I think you're replacing those minutes with Jalen Tyson. I feel pretty good about the entire bigger. 48 minutes here.
Yeah, you're just a lot bigger. You're just a lot shootier. And, Dennis has had a rough stretch of play as of late, where he hasn't been quite as strong as you might want. So, I just think Dennis is kind of in that space with this team, this moment, this form where you kind of want him to be the break glass in case of emergency guy, not the first thing you pull out of the cabinet. But that's a pretty good break glass in case of emergency guy. And I will say, if Jalen is healthy and in good form, I don't expect Dennis to be in. I wouldn't put Dennis in the rotation, but I would expect him to play at least 20 minutes in at least 1 or 2 games in the playoffs at some point, where it's like Kenny is going to be like, who's going to change the vibe up? Dennis, get out there. Like, I think that's just going to happen. And I think
that's a good role for him, to be clear. Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. So I think in general, I was pretty good with it. Even going back to the times where Dean started with the 2 bigs back in February, those were games where Jalen Tyson was playing more coming in off the bench. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to close with them. And maybe that was, hey, Dean's working his way back from this ankle, so that's part of why we didn't close with them. But I think the other part was, even though it wasn't a good offensive game for Sam, he's just so trustworthy, and he makes the right play in so many of these situations that I didn't blame Kenny for going to him in that spot. But overall, I was pretty fine with the rotations in this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Should we talk about the fun part, which is the third quarter, where I think is that the best this version of the Cavs has looked over a 12-minute stretch?
I think, considering opponents, yes. And what I really, really loved about that quarter was that the team just was flying around and they were completely in sync. And Carter, we know that teams move fastest when everyone's in sync. Zoom Workplace keeps meetings, chats, documents, and more together, so your work flows like a perfect play. Keep work moving and zoom ahead with Zoom Workplace. It was pretty fun that in a game where Harden was not his most efficient by any stretch of the imagination, he wasn't really getting guys going from a playmaking standpoint. He wasn't shooting well from the floor. That third quarter was the sign of life. He hit some massive, massive shots to help turn around the momentum of that game.
That goes 3 of 4 from 3 in the quarter. Gets a couple steals, couple assists.
He was active. He was really, really bringing it. And maybe some of the fourth quarter was, hey, now I'm the hot hand. Like I'm going to make up for the bad first half that I had. Whatever the case was, I thought that the third quarter was a perfect example of how good this team can be, how good the top end talent of this roster, when the energy is there, when the buy-in is there, when the attention to detail is there, how high of a level this team is capable of playing at. The question is going to be how long they sustain it, and can they make sure that the floors aren't as low. But that third quarter to me was some of the most fun I've had watching Cavs basketball since the All-Star break.
Yeah, I mean, they hold Atlanta to 20 points in the quarter, which on a night where even when their effort was good, Atlanta was still scoring a lot and hitting some tough shots. And again, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, McCollum, those guys can do that kind of thing. Holding them to 20 points, forcing 8 turnovers in the quarter, just felt like they were everywhere. The consistent effort was there, the consistent focus, and then they only had 2 turnovers themselves in the quarter. And obviously shot the lights out from 3, which never hurts. They go 7 of 10, including Max Strus hitting the functional buzzer beater. It just felt like that was a real proof of concept for them. Everyone's positive in the quarter. And Donovan was just incendiary. Like, I mean, he had 13
just
points.
Incredible shot.
He had 13 points. Like maybe 3 of them were looked easy. And by the way, only 3 free throw attempts in a quarter where you score 44 points is pretty amazing. So I don't have a lot to say other than holy crap, Donovan, because that was what that quarter was. That was maybe the best way to frame that third quarter, because you have 22 points from Donovan and James combined. It just kind of felt like we're just more talented than you quarter, and those quarters feel really nice because that hasn't always been the case with this team this year. We haven't had a lot of those quarters where it just feels like unfair for the other team.
Yeah, and it gets back to what we talked about on the last podcast, right? Like the reason to have confidence in the Cavs going into the playoffs is how talented the top end of this roster is, right? And when James and Donovan are clicking and the bigs are involved, this is a really, really tough team to beat, right? And when all 4 of those guys are out there, they're a really, really good team on both ends of the floor, right? Like, yes, we've had lapses where the guards are playing poor defense. And I think that happened a fair bit tonight as well, where James and Donovan were not as engaged as they needed to be defensively. James, in particular, I thought really struggled on that end of the floor tonight, or at the very least was not engaged. But when the bigs are covering for them, when you have Dean Wade out there, or you have, Max Strus or Sam Merrill, but it's those four guys, you can feel really good about how those minutes are going to go. There's not a lot of situations where that group does not play well. And I think that is what we're going to just have to bank on, right? Is that they're going to be able to flip the switch, that the energy level is going to need to be where it's at. And, you're talking about Jalen Tyson, whether or not he's going to be available for game one of the playoffs. It's important to remember the earliest the playoffs can start is 10 days from now. This team is going to have opportunities to get healthier, to get film studies in, to work and practice, to communicate. There is a real chance for this team to bond together and get clicking at the right time. And we know that the playoffs are all about clicking at the right time. And we also know that your momentum going into the playoffs, coming out of the regular season, it kind of gets derailed when you're one of those teams that's not competing in the play-in. You do have such an extended break here. And that was one of the things that I had talked to Max Strus about in the interview as well, which really, really appreciate his insight on that. So I'm excited, and my confidence is still, it's not at the highest level because I haven't seen this team just blowing teams out and playing consistently at a high level. But I still do have kind of this baseline confidence in this group because of how talented the core is.
Yeah, they are. You just, again, you watch this game and you just look at what the Cavs can throw out there, and it's pretty darn good. Like that foursome continues to win their minutes, not by a little, but by a lot. And as the rest of the group kind of finds that continuity, I really feel like things are gonna keep clicking into place. And again, I do think meat was left on the table here. Cavs probably should have scored 130, 135 points in this game.
I agree.
They did not play well in the fourth quarter, and even when they did, swing the ball, it was late. Like, I saw some folks in our Discord grumpy that Sam turned down the three to get to Evan on that open corner three, and it's like, guys, the pass to Sam was late. Like, you got to get it to him a little faster and on time and on target, and he will take that. So like, I just think the sharpness wasn't there in the fourth. But again, that tells me that, like, this team in a game that, like, against a red hot Hawks team that has played better than the Cavs the last couple of months. I think there's no other way to say it. This is not like the Indiana Pacers where we were screaming that, like, hey, this darling of the league still isn't playing as well as the coming back to earth Cavs. Like, that is not the case in a matchup like this. So the fact that they held them off, they had their kind of explosion in the third quarter that basically put the game away for all intents and purposes. There's stuff to hold on to here. And while I think I might have gone for more of a rest approach if I were in charge. And again, as always, thank God we're not. It is nice that we got to see it as fans.
Yeah, I totally agree. And obviously there is an uphill climb for this group to find the chemistry and the continuity with all the adversity that's hit them late in the season. But there's ways to do that. And that's the kind of stuff that we talked to Max Strus about. Again, was super grateful to have the opportunity to talk to Max. Big thanks to Cavs PR for setting that up. So without further ado, here is the Max Strus interview. And for everyone tuning in on live on YouTube, we appreciate you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasetown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasetownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs. We are thrilled to be joined today by Max Strus, Cavs wingman. Thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing, Max?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, I want to start by saying congratulations on your recovery from that injury. I think anyone that's been through a long rehab process, even if the end goal is sitting in a chair like me right now, knows how difficult that can be. Forget coming back to an NBA rotation. Been the biggest challenge for you as you've worked your way back into the lineup?
I think just getting the feel back, and that's so broad, but offensively, defensively, there's just so many things that go along with the game that when you don't play for a long time, you kind of just lose those things a little bit. But I'm slowly getting them back. Offensively, it comes a little faster, but defensively, it's like the reactionary stuff. It's getting the angles back and understanding the game on that side of the things. You just need to retrigger your brain a little bit. And when you can't do that stuff for so long, you just lose it a little bit. So the more times I can do it, the more times I can put myself in those situations, the better off I'm going to be.
Has there been any aspect that's come a little easier than you expected? Just kind of understanding that it was going to be such a challenge returning to the game?
I think like cardio and like pace of the game wise, I think I've been fine.
Hmm.
I think that goes to all the work that I've put in and how much I've done to make sure that when I come back, I'm going to be in shape. You can't really replicate, game speed or, um, running up and down the court in a game with all the physicality that's involved with it. But I try to do as much as possible to try to keep my cardio up, and I think I've been pretty good in that field.
Yeah, honestly, your return, particularly on the offensive side, has been a lot smoother than I think. Trying to have realistic expectations. Already seen like these big games and stuff like that, and the way your activity on the glass and stuff has been really impressive. Do you have a pet set or action that when you've either sat for a while or gone without a shot for a while, where when you hear it called, you feel like, all right, I've got this one. This is going to help me get into my groove. Is there any play that kind of stands out to you in that regard?
We don't, to be honest, like we don't really run plays for me. There's not a lot that is for me to come off of actions and shoot like that. My everything I do is kind of in the flow of the game, in the flow of our offense, and um, a lot of it's just random. And I
Mm.
kind of know that and kind of prepare myself in regard to that. And we have a lot of dynamic ball handlers that can get off of it and make great passes. And I've slowly gotten comfortable with James, playing alongside him and him finding me when I'm open and making unbelievable passes and just had great looks and wide open looks and been able to knock him down.
Well, when it comes to random and those type of opportunities, I would think that James Harden is kind of at the top of the list out of players that are able to create that. Being an all-time playmaker. Has there been any adjustments for you, like just learning what he's capable of pulling off as a playmaker, given the size and the passing angles that he's able to create?
Yeah, yeah, I think his vision is exceptional. The way he sees the game, his IQ for the game. He's a very smart basketball player, and the way he sees the floor is very unique. And we kind of see it the same way. It's been a different adjustment between him and Darius. I'll be the first one to admit that. I mean, we play a different brand of basketball. We play, it's a little slower pace, but it's more. Dissecting the defense. And I've gotten comfortable playing in both. I'm used to the randomness run around pace wise, and now we're slowing a little bit down and playing off of James, and I'm getting used to that now as well.
What's your favorite kind of way to get another team to call a panic timeout? If you had your option of either a pull up three or throwing that lob in transition, what would be your go to panic timeout for an opposition?
I'm always going to take threes over twos. That three is more points than twos. If you can string along like three or four threes in a row, I think that's the best way to make the other team call a timeout. And you go on a swing like that and a run like that, it just kind of puts everybody back on your heels. When you make open shots and knock it down from the arc, it kind of opens everything else up.
You guys were hit with a lot of adversity, obviously, honestly, kind of seemingly out of nowhere in last year's playoffs. Having gone through that experience where, honestly, I believe you guys had a legitimate chance to win a title last year. Does that alter either your perspective or your mentality heading into these playoffs, just understanding that, things can happen at any point?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the name of the game in the playoffs. You can't, nothing's set in stone. It's the health. You got to stay healthy. That's the biggest part of the playoffs, and then just playing your best basketball at that time. And whoever's hot at that time, I think we ran into a Pacers team that was playing their best basketball, and they were extremely hot shooting the ball and playing their best brand of basketball, and we just ran into them at the wrong time. And I think anybody can find that when the playoff starts. I don't think I think we learned that the regular season wasn't as much as a predictable thing that is going to translate to the playoffs. So I think our mindset has been solid all year that, when we lose a couple or not playing our best, this isn't the end all be all. Like we still have time to fix it. We still have time to figure it out. And I think this group is really looking forward to that going into this next couple weeks.
Do you think having kind of this play-in week where it's basically a mini training camp between the regular season and the postseason for teams in your position, do you think that changes the impact of momentum coming off of a regular season? That it's almost a little bit of a reset for you guys?
I think it can, especially for a team like us and the way our team has been made up this year. We've added a lot of pieces. Like this is my 10th game tonight. Like James, Dennis, Keon got them at the trade deadline. Dean's been in and out. Jalen's been in and out. Like we're still like adding all of these things, and we still haven't been whole. JA's been out. Like there's all of these things, and I think having that week in between is going to be huge for us. I think for us to get in the gym, get around each other, and just play and just kind of to feel it out in a setting like that will be huge for us before we start the playoffs.
Yeah, it seems like from an outsider's perspective that when you're integrating these new pieces, whether it's guys coming back from injury or the new additions via trade, that the offense comes a little bit more naturally. Guys kind of know how to play off of one another. Whereas on the defensive side, so much of it is, that understanding, that communication, things like that. Is there something that you guys can do, just understanding that you're not going to have a lot of time together as a full unit, over that week to kind of mitigate some of those issues and get the communication to where it needs to be in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, the more film we can break down, the more time we have together to talk about it, to see it, and to put it into play, is going to be huge for us. So I think over these past week already, we've been communicating nonstop, watching a lot of film on how we can be better defensively, how, one guy likes to guard somebody and we can help him in that way. And we have solid defenders. We just got to put it together and figure out how we can play off each other better and understand how our roster is set up to put that into our, best position defensively.
Communication does seem to be such a big key, right? And when it comes to you guys, in the past, you've had a lot of softer spoken players and guys that, I remember talking to Jarrett years back where he's like, I'm not a big talker on defense. And then a couple of years later, media day, he's like, yeah, I'm working on talking. Like I'm now talking more. That's always been something that I've noticed has been a big part of your game, right? Like communicating on the floor and talking. What is having that time away where you're recovering from the injury and you're kind of just with the guys off the court? Do you feel like it's kind of changed some perspective or kind of added some growth to almost viewing the game more like a coach and the impact that had on your communication?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I've always been somebody that can like lead by example, and it's easier to lead with your voice when you're out there doing it. And I had a tough time early on in the season when you're watching the game and you want to say it, but like you're not out there doing it, so it's hard to have the confidence to step up and say that when you can't go out there and show it and show that you can do that and lead by example. And I think I've grown exponentially this season in that regard. Just having guys keep pushing me to use my voice, telling me that they trust what I see, and it started with Kenny and it trickled down the whole coaching staff, and then Donovan and guys that have been here know that I care, know what I'm about. So when I do speak up, when I do say things, people do listen, and I think it has helped me vocally this year and just trying to lead in any way possible.
Obviously, we know what your guys' macro goals are for the postseason here, right? You want to win a championship, and I think you have the talent to absolutely make that push. Do you have any personal or kind of micro goals for yourself heading into the postseason?
No.
No, no, just do
No, I
what needs to
don't.
be done.
Yeah, just win. There's no time for personal accolades. There's no time for personal goals. Uh, Season, it's all about the team and winning. And whatever my job is going to be, just do it to the best of my ability and understanding that that will give us the best chance to win and just help in any way possible. That's the goal, and that should be everybody's mindset.
Right on. Well, I think that's what fans really appreciate about your game, your ability to fill in and contribute in so many different ways. Thank you so much for your time today, Max. We really do appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.